I personally always go for everything mixed up, but it kind of fits together in the end.
How was that for my flash answer? Festival outfit on the fly.
It's one thing to have a life-changing experience in general, but then it's because of crypto.
Well, that is beautiful, and I'm definitely going to send her this clip of the podcast because I know exactly who you're talking about, and I agree that it was a super heartfelt message.
Being at this small event and then seeing the artist on big stages going forward, it's really like you're birthing Superfans.
We want to create a space that connects music people in LA with crypto people, and we're gating the alcohol behind the creation of a wallet.
How do you actually know what people's intentions are in the space? Do people mint the song because they want to support you as Coopahtroopa? They want to support Coop Records? The broader vision of bringing music on chain for the specific artist?
I actually think the reason that people are minting has nothing to do with any of those three buckets at the moment.
The event that you're planning tomorrow, what is it about? And, well, can you give me some FOMO?
Midnight Diner, baby. So the backstory behind Midnight Diner is that for the last year, I've been throwing house parties here in Los Angeles, where we just had a couple hundred people come over the house. We would do release parties for artists like Daniel Allen. We did like a Halloween party for this artist named Bloody, and they got to be too big and they kept getting shut down by the cops. So we had to move them to another location. And so the Midnight Diner is basically our continuation of a house party that started in LA, where we book artists that are releasing music on Coop Records, and we bring together crypto people and music people. And they've never met before. We basically put them in a room and we play great music, and we do an open bar, and we let people download wallets, collect POAPs, do all this fun stuff. And then we mint the sets on sound, and we airdrop them to everyone who's collected a Midnight Diner pass, or to anyone who came to the event and set up a wallet.
That's really cool. I didn't know that you're mixing up crypto and non-crypto folks. And what it reminds me of is this one fashion/crypto event that I went to in London, I think 2 years ago, by Montclair. It was called Montclair Genius. Maybe you've heard of it. It was
Wow, it sounds sick.
It was amazing. It was like a lot of art installations. There was a rave, a Rick Owens show. There was a lot of like big musicians present. I ran into J Balvin for the first time, which was super fun. And the thing is, they attempted to actually make people more familiar with NFTs, because at the entrance, once you scanned your entrance ticket, they sent you an NFT link, or like something to mint an NFT.
Montclair?
Montclair, yes.
Wow, this is what, peak 2021 bull market?
This was, I think, early 2022.
Nice.
So not even the peak, but it was interesting.
What a time.
It was so fun. There was an Alicia Keys pop-up concert. It was really like,
damn,
basically for the public, but it was very like well targeted at people that were in this fashion creative music space in London, and just really fun. But the thing is that the experience was super bad, because people that I was like talking to at the event, they were like, they have no idea what NFTs are, and I'm not going to do anything with this email because I have zero idea what this is about. Could be a scam, could be bad. So basically nothing happened after. It just got lost.
Don't you dare cut that out. That's the reality of the situation. That's what I was saying earlier, is that like in crypto, people do all these things where they have these like experiences and these drops and whatnot. We're bringing the world on chain. And then it's just like falls on deaf ears, where people are like, dude, I don't want to collect your NFT. I don't want to make a wallet. Like, I don't care. And so you have to figure out a way to make them care. And it's a eternal struggle. I definitely haven't figured it out. So yeah.
After your events, how do you somehow like bring these people together? Do you like make them join a group chat or something like that? How do you keep them around?
We're still figuring that out. You know, we have a text group that we've been setting up using a company called Lalo, but that's not on chain. It's basically just like a phone number that you can text, and then you get updates about all of our future events. And then we have airdrops that we do to everyone who collected the Midnight Diner pass. But realistically, the ability to communicate with collectors of past drops is not very easy on chain. And also, people in LA don't want to do crypto things because crypto is not cool right now. Like, it's not where it was in 2021, where people like wanted to buy NFTs and like be into it and whatnot. Admittedly, the biggest challenge for Midnight Diner has been finding the through line where someone who's not into crypto but that wants to come and see the good music like actually leaves that event having an understanding of what crypto is and having the ability to actually participate in that economy. Because even just getting someone to like set up a wallet, even with Base Smart Wallet, or getting them to collect a POAP or want to collect the set or anything, it's extremely difficult. And so I think for us, a big learning for us is really just figuring out how do you just get someone who has no intention of ever being into crypto to actually want to get into it. And so what we're doing tomorrow is we're gating the alcohol behind the creation of a wallet. So if you want free drinks at the bar, you have to set up a wallet and we get you a wristband, and that wristband is what gives you free alcohol. So we're running a lot of experiments, but we're going to run it back with the free booze, see if that can get some people over the edge.
That's an interesting approach. I think that's super interesting. I really want to like see how that went afterwards. So you do this event to also onboard new artists, or what's your primary way of finding artists?
I would say a little bit of both. I'd say the main intention of this event is to showcase existing artists that we have on the label. And so the artist who's headlining tomorrow is from the UK, very popular in the UK. He's actually starting to become very popular here in the US as well. He's like touring and playing a bunch of festivals. We've released about 10 or 15 songs from him on chain. His name's 33 Below because when the time this comes out, it's secret guests will already have been announced. 33 Below, phenomenal artist, very popular right now within the electronic music world. And we are having him headline our event because we think it represents not only great music, but also someone who's like culturally relevant within the real music world, you know, like the real electronic music circuit. He's like opening for Fred again and Sammy Vergi and Arl Grime and all these artists, but he has all of his music on chain. And I think that the goal and mission for us as Coop Records is to make people in crypto discover new artists that they wouldn't have otherwise through the fact that the music is being put on chain. And so, you know, for someone like 33 Below, you come to the event and you see this set, you hear all this great music, you hear all of this music that happens to be on chain. We record the set, we upload it to sound, we airdrop it to people, and then we get mints for it. And it's not only a way for us to generate additional revenue for the artists who played the event, but it's also kind of like a IRL boiler room type experience where you had this like very intimate relationship with this artist. And my hope would be that after this event, anyone who comes to it will be like, oh yeah, I know 33 Below was there when he played this, you know, 100-person show in LA. And like, I'm always going to have that memory that sticks with me when he goes on to be a major artist in the next like 3, 5, 10 years.
I think in a way, like putting myself into that situation of like being at this small event and then seeing the artist on big stages going forward, it's really like you're birthing superfans, I think, because this like familiar, intimate first moment really makes you feel like you have a special bond with the person, even if there's not too much personal contact around. When you onboard new artists to Coop Records, can you walk me through their experience? What's like step by step?
Their experience is that they get a DM from me, typically via Instagram, maybe via TikTok, or maybe via our friends connecting us. You know, maybe I meet them at a festival, IRL here in LA or just somewhere around the country. And I say, hey, I love your music. I run a crypto record label. I would love to be able to help support your music in this new world. And they're like, oh, a crypto record label, what does that mean? And I say, we sell your songs in crypto. And so just send us a song and a cover art, and we're going to make you a wallet. We're going to set up an account for you, get it verified, and we're going to upload your music to sound, and you're going to make ETH. And they're like, okay, well, what is ETH? And I'm like, oh, it's this crypto that people used to buy the songs. Like, oh, I've heard of that. Is that like NFTs and whatnot? And we're like, yeah, well, NFTs are whack, so we don't use that word. Like, pretty much comes up every single time we talk to an artist. We're like, don't use that word. Don't think of it as NFTs. Like, that's not a cool world, and it's going to get a very negative reception. And then we tell them that we don't have any expectation of you needing to talk about this to your fans in the real world. Like, there's a very big intimidation factor around artists feeling comfortable talking about crypto because they don't feel confident about it themselves, and they know that their fans have a very negative stigma around it. So we say, hey, we don't expect you to be posting this on your Instagram or on your Twitter or anything like that. Let us upload the music for you. Let us do our thing. You're going to make some additional revenue that you haven't made before. And all of our collectors are going to be exposed to this like brand new music and this art that we're really excited about. And generally speaking, the relationship develops to a point where the same day that an artist puts out a song on Spotify, they've sent us that song about a week ahead of time. And so we get it uploaded and ready to be released the same day that it comes out on Spotify and all the other streaming platforms.
What you said about like artists communicating with their fans, like on non-Web3 platforms, that was also my question. Like, if they talk about it, if yes, like how do they do that? And it's almost like they're developing this personality in the crypto circles, and they maintain their previous like outside Web3 personality, if that makes sense. So like kind of like having these two personalities. Would you say that's true?
100%. I mean, there's a very few amount of our artists who are on Warpcast. Baker Grace is a good example of this. Daniel Allen, 33 Below's on Warpcast. This artist named Tesh that we have. This artist named Jutes is on there. Gino's on there, obviously. And I tell them that Warpcast is basically their place to be able to like openly talk about crypto, and they can do it without needing to worry about getting any blowback or backlash. And I guess the way that I think about it from a broader sense is that crypto is kind of like this really well kept secret right now where like it was cool for a long time and then it got really uncool. It got really unpopular. Everyone thinks it's a scam. And now we're kind of in this trough where it's like, oh, like crypto is kind of like a secret. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to go talking about it too much, but you want to tell your friends that you trust. And if they are smart and willing to listen, then they can start to make money off their music, which like is kind of crazy, but like artists really don't get paid that much from streaming. And even when they're like touring and playing all these major shows and stuff like that, there's such a high travel costs and production costs associated with putting on these shows that a lot of artists who have 1 million monthly listeners are not like extremely wealthy. I would say like you don't get to be extremely wealthy as an artist until you're about 5 to 7 years into your career in most cases. You've been touring for like 3 to 5 years. You have a couple songs that have like hundreds of millions of streams on Spotify, and that's like a very small percentage. The rest of the artists that you see on Spotify that have like anywhere between 100,000 to 1 million monthly listeners, making $5,000 off of a drop on sound is like super, super meaningful to them. So it might not be the most glamorous thing in the world, but the way I think about Coop Records is like if we can get an artist paid for their music by finding them collectors on chain, and they can use that money to be able to fund their TikTok campaigns or fund their music video or fund paying off their advance to their record label. We kind of are now this like cool little pocket for them that like feels like completely removed from everything else they're doing. It's like this secret little sandbox, but like they start to like it because they no longer have to like shout it from the rooftops. They just get to benefit from it because they make great music, which is how it should be in the first place, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in terms of word of mouth and creators onboarding each other, have you had any of that where like one artist comes in and they like bring 3 artist friends?
Yeah, we have a pretty big problem right now because we have releases every day until like August at the moment, and we only want to be doing one release right now, but we have like 50 to 100 artists that are like kind of in the backlog that we are optimistic to get on at some point, but we want to make sure we're delivering like a good experience. So I'd say that the challenge now is not really around like getting the music on chain. Like we have a shit ton of music that we can be putting up. It's more just about like creating a narrative that actually feels compelling to the collectors and the people who are actually buying the music, because otherwise we're just kind of shoving it down people's throats. And I think I'm currently at this point of realizing like just because we put a bunch of good music on chain doesn't matter. Like you need to be able to understand why we're releasing music with these artists and like why you would support it. And then on like a product level, actually build out a system in which collectors are getting shared upside in the success of not only the label, but also the individual artist. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of in the works for us right now. But I'd say my biggest objective for the month of July here is for us to kind of bring the Coop Records catalog more in-house to our own site and create a collecting experience that feels very incentive aligned, where as a collector of our music, you don't feel like you're just getting milked or like we're just kind of forcing you to collect to just support these artists consistently. But there actually is like a reason to keep coming back and like developing status and social, relationships within the Coop Records community, because it's going to lead to something of value, hopefully, in the future.
It's an interesting concept to have this like brand as Coop Records. Then you also have your personal brand as Coopahtroopa, and there's each of the artists' different personal brands that might be developed or like might be in different stages of development. So it will be interesting to think, when you buy a song, do people mint the song because they want to support you as Coopahtroopa? They want to support Coop Records? They want to support the broader vision of bringing music on chain, or they want to support this specific artist? But I guess all 3 of them, and we will not see or know until there are better analytics tools. Like, how do you actually know what people's intentions are in the space? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I love those 3 buckets that you've currently laid out. I actually think the reason that people are minting has nothing to do with any of those 3 buckets at the moment. If you look at how we're driving mints across like 95% of our music, it's coming from platforms like Boost XYZ, from Layer 3, from Coinbuys. And so to be very direct with you, I think the main reason people are collecting is because they want to be farming the airdrop of the platforms that are running the incentive campaigns. And so users are buying because they want to get the Layer 3 token, because they want to get the Boost token, because they want to get the Coinbuys token. And what I'm currently trying to figure out is how do I take that same energy around like I want the layer 3 token, let's call it, and shift that into like I want the Coop Records token. Because I think right now we're kind of benefiting from the foundation that's been built by these sort of incentive alignment platforms. But from my perspective, I think the opportunity for us is for people to be excited about buying into the Coop Records vision. And I would say right now, maybe 5 to 10% of our collectors generously are like actually buying either A, to support the artist, or B, to like support me or the Coop Records brand. But I would say the vast majority of people are just crypto natives who are just like, yo, I'm going to spend $2 to get $1 back in some meme coin. And I'm going to roll the dice that me collecting this thing for $2 is going to earn me an airdrop in the future that's going to be worth more than the amount I'm spending by collecting this song today. A little bit pessimistic, but the hard nature and truth of the situation.
If you could like design your dream framework for your fans, for the Coop Records fans, and for the fans of each individual artist, like, would you want to have your own Coop Records community that is always there, supports the releases, has a stake in the releases potentially as well, and or both? Would you go out and create like these frameworks where artists can build their own communities from scratch? All this like helping fans to build relationships and helping artists build relationships with their fans. It's kind of a whole different venture. Are you planning to go into that direction too?
Yeah, I would say it definitely starts with the record label and us building a community of people that are excited about what we're doing. And so I'd say that's been my biggest like realization in the last 2 or 3 weeks is like us just getting mints for these artists on Boost and Layer 3 is great from getting them paid, but it's not creating a strong enough core that people want to keep coming back and supporting it for the right reason. And so I think like what success looks like for Coop Records from like a year from now would be that there is a loyal group and community of curators who are bringing music to the label, of collectors who are buying that music, and then of fans who are coming to our events, who are showing up to our site, who are listening to the music, who are discovering these artists. And I think the way that you align those people is by giving them ownership and upside in what we're doing. Where right now, when you're collecting a song on Coop Records, you're getting a digital collectible with a seat in the audience, with the ability to download the record. And being very direct with you, most people don't want to buy songs for that reason. Like they don't see the value in why they would want to collect a song if they're not getting something that they can resell and flip for 10x, or something that they don't have like upside exposure in. And so they're basically doing it because they have the right incentives, but they don't want to be doing it. And I think the main thing that we need to figure out is like, why does someone want to actually collect this song? Like, why do they want to come and support our record label or support the artist? And so to answer your question about a dream world, to me, what this looks like is you come and discover new music through the Coop Records site. And in return for that, you get ownership in the label by virtue of the amount of value that you're creating for our ecosystem and for the artists that surround it. And so hypothetically speaking, I buy a song for $2, I get back $1 of label tokens. And then taking that a step further, I buy a song for $2 and I get $1 back of artist tokens. And so now not only do you have like a label experience, which is giving you upside into all the different songs they were curating, but you also have these more defined pockets where you can get upside into that artist career because you're starting to collect and support their music on chain. And so I could go like pretty far down that rabbit hole in terms of like why I think that's interesting and valuable and unique. But I would say at the end of the day, just more direct incentive alignment. If you're supporting music on chain, you should be receiving tokens and assets that represent your support, and like an instrument that can be traded and staked and curated, and all these great things that we see with tokens all around the ecosystem today.
About artists and your economic model with each artist, how does it work in terms of economics? So you have artists setting their own prices, or is it standardized prices?
Free mints, baby.
Free mints. Cool.
Free mints. Free mints for the small price of $2.70. You get this free NFT.
Yes. Same with the podcast.
Well, that's the new meta, you know? And I think that a lot of people in crypto that have been here since 2021, they're just like, I don't understand why I would buy something that's free and unlimited. But that is the single reason that the business model of a record label works, because you can collect these things from now through the end of time. And basically the bet that we're taking is that if we bring on hundreds and thousands of songs to crypto, that like over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be way more people here, and those people are going to be down to collect these songs organically. And so you're sort of setting up this foundation where you're capturing mint revenue from now through the next cycle and the cycles to come. And so I think something that's worth calling out here is You asked like what our model is. It's 50-50 splits. Like Coop Records is 50%, artists is 50%. The reality is that we are probably driving like 95% of mints to any song that's on Coop Records right now because we're putting ad spend behind it. What that means is that we run a boost or a quest and we just put, on the low end $500, but on average like $1,000 into boost and incentive campaigns. And there's just a spread to be made on that for us as a record label. So I don't want to get too into the weeds there. I nerd out on it. I think it's fucking fascinating. I would say if you are interested in this, go listen to Going Viral on Chain, this podcast I did with Adam. It's one of my favorite episodes and we talk about it ad nauseum, but that's kind of the meat and potatoes behind the business today.
That was a great episode. I would say that the episode definitely helped us in our decision whether we should go on pods or not. So yeah, shout out to
Lucas, if you're listening, that's right, baby. Lucas, the founder of Pods, the GOAT. Shout out 0xl.eth.
Cool about the economic model. I think right now you're using Hypersub as well. What are the subscriber rewards and what do you do there?
So Coop Records Club is our on-chain subscription. It's 0.01 ETH per month, and you get an edition of every song that we put out on chain. Then you get 10% of our on-chain earnings. And so thanks to Hypersub V2, we're basically just airdropping ETH into the vault every week. And if you're a subscriber to Coop Records Club, you're getting exposure to all of the ETH that we're generating from every song that we release on the record label.
To make sure that everyone understands what's the difference between master royalties and publishing.
You know what's interesting? I'm going to answer this question, but part of the reason why I started Coop Records, because I think that the traditional music industry is really hard for people to understand. And it's really amazing to be able to play around in this world where you just worry about mints that are happening on chain and you just have like a direct split. And it's like, yo, I take 50%, this artist takes 50%. And if they buy it for $1, 50 cents goes to me and 50 cents goes to the artist. And I know that doesn't sound like game changing, but relative to how like music actually works, pretty fucking amazing. Excuse my language. Masters are basically what you get paid out on from Spotify. So if someone streams your music on Spotify or Apple Music, and publishing is what you get paid out on if you get placed in a commercial or if you get played on the radio. And so there's just kind of different places that music generates revenue in the real world. And relative to where it is making money, you can get paid out on that depending on what kind of credits you have on a song. And so typically if you're like a producer or songwriter of a record, you'll have more of the publishing because you kind of made like the underlying song infrastructure of it, versus if you are like the performing artist or like the artist who's on stage playing the record out, you're going to have more of like the master because it's your artist project that's driving a lot of the value behind the song, as opposed to publishing, which is more about the actual composition of the song itself. And if people are covering it or making remixes or whatnot, the publishing side is really the side that gets paid out more. So I'm not sure if that was a great answer, but that's my attempt at explaining the archaic system that is masters and publishing in the music industry today.
About all of the new tools that we have now in the Web3 space for music artists or artists in general, what do you advise artists? What do you say is like the ideal tech stack? What do you advise as the perfect or ideal tech stack?
The reality is that we don't advise artists to use any crypto tech stack because they're really intimidated by it. And for us, if we can get their song on sound and get them into a wallet that has ETH into it, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. So like anything beyond that is icing on the cake. So the way that it's typically worked for us in the past is that we release a couple records with an artist on chain. They come in to withdraw their money and they say, I have, $3,000 in ETH in here. And they're like, what the hell? This is crazy. I didn't expect anything. Like, what do I do from here? And then what we say to them is set up a Warpcast account. This is where you can talk to all of your fans and be able to have relationships with them. If they go really deep down that rabbit hole, then we say, this is how we set up a hyper sub. And this is how we basically create like a subscription around your music. And if they want to go the furthest down the rabbit hole, then we show them how to actually set up their own boost, which is like, here's how you can start doing your own ad campaigns on it. But I would say for any artist that's joining the space today, tech stack to me is Warpcast, Hypersub, Boost, and I'll throw in Sonata here because Sonata is a tool that we're developing for music discovery and curation. And if you just post your music on Warpcast, it's going to automatically get picked up on Sonata, and you're going to start earning notes for just being someone who's sharing music within the Farcaster ecosystem.
About artists, I'm really interested in how do you create Superfans and what is this
Oh
tech
man.
stack or this mix of tools that would enable artists in the future to create this group of super fans much faster than we did in the past. I wonder, in terms of interactions you have with your fans, I mean, whether that's private pre-listening sessions before you do a public release or something else, what do you think is this magic mix of interactions that you would like to see?
I don't think that anyone has like a very clear understanding of how to make super fans until they're very far into their career. And so I'd say like that's kind of the question that every artist is always asking every single day when they're making TikToks and reels and short form content, is like, how do I just build an organic fan base? And so my first answer to that question would be the standard things that exist in the music world today, which is like posting videos that feel authentic and engaging to be able to create top of funnel relationships, and then having things like an Instagram broadcast channel. I'd highly recommend this new project called Vault.fm that just launched. It's basically a place to share your unreleased music. To me, I think super fan relationships come down to like how intimate you want to get with your fans about very personal experiences to you. And so this artist, Evan Gia, that we just released with last week, she had a song called Talking Walls just come out. It got New Music Friday, cover of Dance Rising, and she just got dropped from her label. And so this to her was like a very big comeback song of like, I can do this, you know, I believe in myself, etc. And her biggest value prop to me as an artist, and why we wanted to get her on the label, is that she has a really strong relationship with her community. And so on release day, she had a listening party where she invited everyone to the studio that she made the record at. And then they went up on the rooftop and danced and celebrated and had like a full party. And you could only get invited to that if you were a super fan of her music that was subscribed to her broadcast channel. So I'm not even going to really dabble too deep in the like how to build a super fan community on chain, because frankly, I don't think that it really exists right now. I mean, I'll give a quick shout out to projects like Medallion, like I said, Vault.fm, etc. But honestly, I don't think that there's like a very clear funnel for that today. So anything I say would be a complete, lie, because there really isn't great platforms for building super fans on chain today.
Well, everyone wishes there would be a shortcut to it, but there's none. And I think what you said about top funnel, building these relationships with artists, between artists and their fans, is something that I've experienced a lot of times. And one recent example was where I saw an artist that is on Sound. I'm not sure if she's part of Coop Records, but I saw her video that she posted on Webcast, and she sent this heartfelt message to people who minted her songs. She made quite a lot of money through her mints, and she was saying that she never believed she was able to do that early on in her career. To hear her thoughts, to hear about the process that she went through, maybe the failures she's experienced before, and this really made me actually go and mint her song, because I was like, wow, if I can support at least a little bit, that's what I'm going to do. But the question then is, how do you make people stick around? But
Well,
we'll
that is
see.
beautiful. And I'm definitely going to send her this clip of the podcast because I know exactly who you're talking about. And I agree that it was a super heartfelt message. So we need more
Okay.
people like you, because when that happens and there is a moment of like, oh my God, this worked, and then they like share that moment and it actually like resonates further within the community, that's kind of like the viral loop that I really think happens at scale. Because right now, going viral on chain is like, you basically know how to leverage these third-party platforms to get mints and get in the algorithm. But what I'm praying is that eventually there will be a world where there's enough people who want to organically support these artists, where they see videos like that one and they want to go and collect it just to be able to be a part of it and to give back, and not really because they expect anything in return. You know what I mean?
I think there's a lot of people that will do that, but it's kind of two worlds. You have this like, well, the degen world, and then you have people who really genuinely love music and discovering new artists. And I think I've become more of the latter over the last few months because I got more involved in on-chain music. So it made me appreciate discovering new artists and also the beginnings of things.
Also, you have great taste in music. I just want to give you a quick shout out because you've been posting awesome music to Sonata that I've been discovering, and it's been fantastic. And I think that it's really cool to be able to see people just share whatever music they like. Because I think for a long time, the biggest blocker of on chain music is that people are only talking about the songs that were currently on chain. And that's a fraction, tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of all the music in the world. But something that I've really found value in out of building Sonata and some of these other products is that you just share like YouTube links and Spotify links and SoundCloud links to all these artists that you probably listened to for years before this, and I can now like tip you and reward you on chain for sharing that music, but the music doesn't have to be on chain on the first place. And I think that's like a very big unlock in terms of like how we actually get this thing to grow and kind of get people more interested in it.
Yeah, so nice. But it's a bit like Reddit, right? So you can upvote and download.
Yep. So we can't prevent people from posting it. To start out, we made it so you had to have a power badge, which is a pretty good filter for just like mitigating spam. We also launched a hyper sub, where if you don't have a power badge, but you are interested in being a part of the community, you can subscribe. It's $5 a month and you get a daily allowance, and you get the ability to have all of your posts shown on the product, which is basically just been our way of policing and moderating it. But I would say we actually have the opposite problem, which is not how do we moderate the content being posted. The problem we have is how do we get people to post more, and how do we get people to actually understand that there is a tipping economy that exists here. And I would say the kind of core focus for Sonata that we've really honed in on over the last like week or two is this is a platform for music curators. Like it's literally a platform for people like you that are running the Latin music channel because you are bringing people together. And I think that we wanted to shift the focus for Sonata specifically away from like getting artists paid, which is very important, but that's not the core focus of Sonata. It's getting curators paid. It's getting people like you paid for discovering new music, for sharing that music, for organizing local communities around it. And so some of the things we're working on now with Sonata is issuing tokens directly to channels. And so if you are a channel that's on Sonata and shares the most music and has the most upvotes, you're going to start to get issuance from the network directly. And then we're going to start letting people stake on those channels. And so if I'm like a curator and an interested music fan myself, not only can I upvote individual songs, I can go, hey, I really like the Latin channel. I think that it's going to be very popular. I'm going to actually stake my notes on the Latin channel. And when the Latin channel gets paid out from the network for being a popular channel, I actually can earn a percentage of that for being a curator who believes in the music that's being posted in this channel.
Cool. What's your experience so far and like the feedback from people? I saw that you were commenting on my posts and other people's posts when they share a song.
It's a really good question. I honestly just want to give a shout out here to Sebas.eth and Sweetman.eth, who have been sort of the people who have been pushing the ship the most on the Sonata side of things. They're incredible, and so they're going to have much more dialed feedback than I would specifically. But from my perspective, the feedback was we launched it at FarCon. It was exciting because it was something that happened at FarCon. What I'm going to say, I'm going to take a step back for a second. All of these crypto apps have this weird thing where like you launch an app and everyone like celebrates you and they're like, oh, congrats, you launched this thing. Congrats. And then people just move on to the next thing. And so like after the first week or two, like the thing that you launched doesn't have nearly as much hype anymore. For Sonata, we basically had to get out of that initial launch phase, find our like true benchmark, which was like we launched the site, we get a couple thousand users, it's peaking, bottoms out. Now we have like 250, 300 people a day visiting the site. And it's a lot more about just like intentional one-on-one relationships. So just like building out the relationships with the curators like yourself, with the channel owners. And I would say the general sentiment from those people has been that they love the idea of the product, but they need more ways to like understand who's sharing the music and build relationships with people on that level. Because right now, Sonata is very much like an aggregator that's pulling in links that exist on Farcaster, but we kind of, for this to be successful, we need to flip it where people are coming to Sonata first to share their music, and that's getting posted to Farcaster second, as opposed to right now, it's being posted on Farcaster first, and we're using that as a funnel to pull people into the Sonata product second, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Reminds me also of the conversation I recently had with the HeroCast team. It was about like, well, how many additional feeds do I want to the feed that I already have? And can I get like oversaturated with feeds? If there's this specific like relationship you build with a curator or with the person who is providing these songs, I think that could be interesting. And it also makes me think of the fact that I've been making playlists on Spotify for ages and I always share them with people. It's like my number one proof of friendship.
I mean, that was honestly one of the earliest visions for Sonata, and I want to give a big shout out to Jesse Walden from Variant here because he really like hammered this home for me. But ideal state for Sonata is you think about Spotify today and you think about the significance that a playlist like New Music Friday and Rap Caviar has. But what if that playlist was actually being curated by fans? And the way that it was being curated is that those playlists had their own channel tokens, and you could upvote content that you wanted to see in those channels by upvoting using those channel tokens. So for example, in Rap Caviar, if you wanted to see your song at the top of Rap Caviar, you would get a bunch of Rap Caviar tokens and you would go and push your music all the way to the top. And this is something that happens a lot kind of behind the scenes in music, where you have curators and tastemakers that are deciding what songs go into these playlists, but it's very much behind closed doors. And so I think that if I zoom out and I'm super delusional and optimistic, what I think success for Sonata looks like is that people have a strong desire to have their music posted there, to be able to have it discovered, and that curators and fans are actually able to moderate what is being shown in those channels by using their tokens as a signal around what they want to see populated at the top of those playlists.
How did you actually get into music in the first place?
The real unfiltered answer here is that I was playing sports my whole life growing up, and I was really into basketball. I was really into competitive sports. And at a certain point in high school, I got exposed to a friend group who started going to a lot of concerts, and we were going to see electronic music, and we were getting drunk and smoking weed and doing like fun things that just felt so different from like my experience growing up and just being like super into competitive sports, that I kind of started to just trust that spiritual creative side of myself, where like when it came time to go to college, instead of pursuing sports and athletics, I decided to pursue music. And so I went to Colorado for school. Red Rocks was this, concert venue that I was always super inspired about. And so I flew out and I went to a Pretty Lights concert, and I was just like, oh, this is calling me. You know what I mean? Like I just kind of felt this pull towards it. And I would say, to answer the question directly, the way I got into music was first and foremost as motivation for sports and for like high performance. And then more foundationally, it was just the source of inspiration in my life. Like I always just found that if I ever needed to get through something, mentally, or I had like a creative roadblock or anything like that, I could just go and see live music. And being in those environments, I just felt so connected to life and, energy, that just became the guiding compass for everything that I do in life as a whole.
Have you had any like intense fan moments? Like I had this experience where I was like, I think between the age of 12 and 16, I was like a diehard fan of a band. I was going to a lot of concerts, was dressing up all in their merch and like really like wanting to marry the singer and stuff like that. Have you had any experience like that?
So many. I would say the one that's I'll give you two. The one that's happened most recently for me that I was still like over the moon about is there's this artist named Millennium that I've been a fan of for the longest time. I went to see his first ever headline show in Colorado about close to 10 years ago at this point. And very recently he sold out SoFi Stadium and Mile High Stadium in Denver and LA. They're like 60,000 tickets each, going from a 100-person room to a 60,000-person room. Recently, over the last 2 years, I got to develop more of like a personal relationship with the artist and his close circle. And so I got to go to the artist's wedding in Aspen and have this like super intimate like moment where you just got to see like their personal life unfold. And I would say that was honestly probably my single biggest like super fan moment, was going from being a fan of this artist for 10 years to seeing them like sell out the stadium, to then getting to go and actually be present at a moment that's super special in their life, that was, this wedding and this like incredible experience that I'm never going to forget.
That's beautiful. I never actually met the band that I was admiring so much. I never met them in person.
You know what's interesting though is Halsey has this lyric in her song that says, "Don't meet your heroes; they're all fucking weirdos." I think there's a lot of truth in that, because the more that I get into music and the more I become super fans of artists today, I don't know, I don't want to sound like cynical or pessimistic or anything, but there's a beauty to the separation and the mystery of it, of like your only relationship being through what you see through like this spectacle that they put on. And so meeting artists is my favorite thing in the world. I absolutely love it. But I do think there is something very special about like that separation that can be created in your like love for an artist relative to like what they're actually like when you meet them and spend time with them in person.
About that time that I mentioned before where I met J Balvin, and I was like, well, I was not like a super fan, but I definitely was a fan, was listening to the music all the time. One of the first reggaeton artists I knew. And it was actually not the nicest encounter. And I didn't expect it to be, because I don't have any specific expectations when I meet artists, especially like big artists like him. But I would say it was not very friendly. And it was at a very cool event where people were quite open, friendly, and it was generally a good vibe. So it didn't leave me with the best feeling. It's true. Yeah.
Well, I think it's representative of what I've learned over the last few years building a personal brand around music and then building a company around it, is that initially I was so into the idea of helping out like bigger artists. So like one of my other favorite fan moments is this artist named Tycho, one of my favorite artists ever. I met my co-founder and now CTO through doing like a custom dev project for Tycho. And, we got a chance to work with him and I got to meet him in person and he was super stoked to meet me, which I thought was super trippy because I like idolize this artist. And over time, I kind of realized that you don't really move the needle as much when you're working with bigger artists because they already have a successful career. They have a huge fan base. Like they have a lot of stuff figured out. You do move the needle a lot more when you're working with smaller independent artists who haven't had their major moment yet. And so I would say now the moments that I really think about are like meeting an artist from their first ever release or like meeting an artist that I discovered really early on SoundCloud, putting their music on chain, them actually having like a really positive experience with that and them feeling like we as Coop Records actually moved the needle in their career. So kind of a different way of answering that question, but I would actually say now my favorite like, super fan moments are less about like meeting pop star who's super big and famous, although that is really cool. It's actually more about like having a meaningful impact on an artist's life and then zooming out over 1, 3, 5 years and just looking at the journey that you guys have really built together.
That's beautiful. And maybe that's also the future of fandom, thinking that crypto allows you to be part of someone's journey from very early on and expressing your belief in something or someone versus actually jumping into something that's already super big. So if we can turn around this like need that people have to connect with an artist at the very beginning versus when they're already on the top.
Well, that's why I do believe fundamentally in what I'm building so much is I go to all these concerts and I see tens of thousands of people so immersed and in love with the performance and like they're having these crazy moments where they're recording, these videos of these songs and they're dancing, they're crying and they're singing their, hearts out. And I just like I feel it so much personally too from just being in those crowds and like feeling that energy that I'm like, we need to capture this and find ways to better represent it online because I feel like currently we don't have a great way to self-express your love of music within the digital ecosystem that exists today. But I found that same self-expression through being a part of the crypto world, through buying ICOs and then doing DeFi summer and then doing NFTs and DAOs and all these different things. So I'm like, oh, I know that it's possible because I've done it with crypto and all the weird the weird ass rabbit holes that exist in crypto, but no one's really done it with like real music love and energy. And I think that's kind of the intersection that I want to just keep on, trekking away at is like, how do you actually recreate those moments that you're going to remember for the rest of your life in a digital form that you can then show to like your grandchildren like 30 years from now because you have like something on chain that actually shows that you were at the very first concert ever of this artist who now is like a major act that is being known for generations to come.
When I go to live gigs, it's always almost like you don't want the moment to end. And at least for me, I'm always like so nostalgic. The moment that it ends and it's over, it's like, I don't want to go home. I want this to continue. It sounds so basic, but it's such a great feeling. I don't even know how I would replicate that.
Well, what's funny is that my co-founder, I was talking to him today, and we were talking about like what is Coop Records and like what does it represent and how do people understand it. And he always comes back to Coop Records is just a party. Like it's just a party that's always on, that we're trying to curate a good vibe for. We're trying to curate the right music. We're trying to make sure that the venue's not too crowded, that it's not too empty, that it has like water for everyone, that it feels like a good place to hang out. And I think that's such a beautiful articulation of it because when you think of what we're building, you can point to sound or you can point to Warpcast, you can point to Hypersub, but that's not quite it. Like what it really is just like a vibe and a feeling and an energy. And right now we have this like tiny little ember that's super, super small and like realistically probably like 50 or 100 people in the world even like know or care about. But if you nurture it the right way, you can start to create this party that is very vibrant and spreads to like all different facets of the world. And so I think just maintaining that spirit and energy of like, this is a party that needs to be well curated and oiled and maintained is like a really healthy way to look at what we're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Like nurturing the community. And it kind of reminds me of this feature that Warpcast recently introduced, which is traditions or like rituals. I call it rituals for channels. What are the rituals that you have as a community or that you have as Coop Records?
Frankly, we have none. And to be honest with you, that's the biggest area that we need to spend time on this year is really developing those rituals and those routines and those practices because we're 1 year old as a company literally today. And basically we spent the whole last year broadcasting outward. We were talking about here's this artist we just released, here's this song release, here's this product we released. And there's a lot of merit in that, and that's very necessary. But now what I'm realizing is like broadcasting doesn't matter if you don't have the core thing to fall back on. And so now I think I'm starting to shift my focus less away from broadcasting, although that's always an engine that's turning, and more into like, what is the core of this thing? How do you get people to show up every day? Why would they want to show up every day? And I have a lot of reference of what this looks like because FWB was a community that I was very involved with very early on. And we created that party in 2021. Like we had this private Discord that went from being this space that only had like 50 or 100 members that was kind of like ahead of its time, social tokens were a meme, etc., to a point when we had thousands of people in this Discord. And when we would have a community call, we would have like 300, 500 people show up, and people were really invested in the spirit and mentality of what that community represented. So I've seen it before. I've seen it on chain in something like FWB, and I've also seen it off chain in the form of like these artist communities, like an artist like Elenium, where these fans have these jerseys that they spend hundreds of dollars on, and there's 50,000 people in an arena like screaming the words to a song. And so I felt it. I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. And it's really just about the discipline of like putting in the 10-year commitment to like building that each and every day, and recognizing that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen extremely slowly and extremely incrementally, which is not something that people want in crypto today, but something that I do fundamentally believe will have value if you stick with it for a long enough period of time.
About your own like DJing activities, when we talk about like creating this magical feeling at live gigs, how do you set the mood at the beginning when you start your own set?
To be honest with you, I just download a lot of songs that I like, and then I open the playlist and I just pick a song, and then I just completely wing it and just feel it out. I don't really like plan anything, or I don't have like any sort of like script behind it. It's really just like feel the energy, feel the mood. And I'm still learning a lot about what that's like, because DJing in my living room is very different from like DJing to a crowd of people live and in a room. One of my goals and my intentions for this year was to perform at least 10 times in person over the course of 2024. And so I'm like about a little over halfway there, but honestly, it really just is like a trust the process type energy, like just playing music that's relevant in that time, music that I really like in that moment, but also being able to look up and look around in the crowd and just be like, do people like this or do they not? And if they don't like it, be able to adapt. And if they do like it, be able to double down in that moment.
I don't have a lot of experience with like DJing myself, apart from like creating playlists for parties, for specific events. And like, for example, when we had the Farcaster meetup in Paris in February or end of January, but it was more like in the background, you have to make sure people can still chat. So it was really different from a party.
Well, that's the meme of crypto parties, though, is that all of my artists that play crypto parties, there's a very specific connotation of what that means, because people just talk and they don't actually dance. And so we had like a couple parties, like I'll shout out Denver 2023. We had a party at this loft, and we got like 500 people in there that were like actually dancing and like ripping and having such a good time. But like more times than not, when we throw crypto parties, it's just people standing around with backpacks and laptops and just chatting. And so the biggest reason why we're doing the Midnight Diner in LA is because we want to create a space that connects music people in LA with crypto people, and hopefully show them that it's okay to dance, and like center it around like that energy, much more than just like be cool because you got in the door at like an open bar thing that like people who are popular in crypto are at, but not actually like dancing and enjoying yourself in the first place.
Yeah, I totally see that. I think I was in New York for like during the NFT NYC time, and there were actually some parties that were quite good.
Anyone you want to give a shout out to? Any parties that you think did a good job?
It was OD Labs. OD Labs did. It was not my type of party, but it was done well, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Shout out OD Labs.
But I still want to ask you a little bit about your experience as a founder and how you actually got started as an entrepreneur. So what was the first thing that you built?
First thing I built was an eBay business selling Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh when I was a junior in high school. And so me and my friend were just really into collecting cards. And so we would just go on eBay and just buy like wholesale lots of like kids throwing out their Pokemon collection, and then just like sell the individual cards for whatever price they were worth, like $1, $2, $5, $20, and then just go to the post office with like 100 packages and just ship it out like every week.
Cool. I was doing something similar, but IRL notebooks, like mainly I would say like themed notebooks, and then there were some limited edition ones, and I was buying them, and I was basically reselling them to my friends at school. How did you get into crypto?
I mean, I'll just take you down the entrepreneurship rabbit hole for a second there. So I started selling Pokemon cards, and then I started selling hat pins of music artists that I really liked. And so something that was really popular back in the day was collecting pins for bands like STS9 or Lotus or Pretty Lights, Grizz, for example. And so I would just be like buying and reselling these pins on like these Facebook groups. And so that's actually what gave me like the most confidence in music having like a market around it, is that I like actually was just buying and selling all these pins from all these like super fan communities. Had a good amount of stint selling weed in college, which was pretty fun. Like great like social networking and just getting to meet a lot of people and like learn about economics and whatnot. And basically why I got into crypto is because I learned about crypto by selling weed. And then I realized that there's a real use for it outside of buying drugs. And that was smart contracts. And so I was going to school for music business. And one of my professors was like, hey, there's this thing called Ethereum, and you can use it to pay artists directly on chain using smart contracts. And I was like, oh shit, you can actually like do things with crypto, like outside of just like going on Silk Road or something like that. And that was kind of my foray into the space. Was 2017. I'm coming out of college. I'm a broke kid with hope and a dream, no clue of where I wanted to go. Music industry sucks. It's not going to make any money. So I was like, screw it, going all in on crypto. And 2017 just went super deep down like the ICO rabbit hole. Started writing a bunch of white papers for projects, started doing like advisory and consultant for anyone and everyone that I could find to, help pay the bills. And shout out Lucas from Pods, who was actually my very first colleague in crypto in 2017. We went to college together, and we basically were just consulting for a bunch of random projects, traveling the world, going to crypto conferences, sleeping on cardboard boxes in Vietnam, doing whatever we could to be able to survive. And here we are today.
Oh, that's such a nice story. Thank you so much for your time and explaining everything so nicely. What you're doing with Coop Records is pretty cool, and I love to see it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan of Los Fomos. I love what you guys are doing, and I think it's amazing. And thank you for the music that you share. And I'm really excited to hear a lot more of it in the future.
And big shout out to your professor. I mean, that's such a cool professor that he told you about crypto in 2017. And already
Yeah, I
made
mean,
the
I've shouted him out on
connection.
a bunch of podcasts and stuff. I don't know if he actually knows that I give him credit for it. And I like text him when I go back to Colorado. I'm like, hey, can I come speak to your class about how you like inspired me to get into crypto? But yeah, I don't know. We just kind of fell out of touch. But huge love for that guy. He definitely like set me down a path that was extremely inspirational and motivating in my life. So if he ever does hear it, just know that he's the guy. And I owe him a
Okay.
lot of credit for where everything is at today.
About Los Fomos, what comes to your mind when you see the page or when you hear Los Fomos
It
music?
started as like an on-chain summer interview series where I just saw it as like you basically giving a spotlight to whoever was being covered in on-chain summer that day. And now I basically see it as you having organic conversations with founders who are building on Base and Farcaster.
Cool. That's pretty much what it is. Only that there's actually a long form podcast to it, which is what we did now.
Mm-hmm.
And the podcast was around before. We've been doing that for like a few years now, but we're actually only starting to really focus on it now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have these on-chain summer series. It's really fun. It's a way for us to network. We are building a protocol, and it's for us a way to connect with the tech audience of what.
Very cool. Skill of being able to like direct the conversation in a good way, like very naturally. And you're a very good host.
Yeah, I think I'm really curious. And if I'm wondering certain things, then there's a chance that other people might be interested too. I guess one thing that is challenging, and you might find that as well as a host, to actually ask things that have not been asked before a million times.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess from my perspective, I basically just start from the fundamentals of like, what do people want to know about this guest? They've never heard of them before. And then I basically just ask them shit that I just want to know about personally,
Yeah.
that I don't really care if anyone else cares about or wants to know about. I'm just like, I just want to know stuff about you and what you're building, or like your thoughts on this thing that I'm working on. And, I feel like I never listened back to my own podcast. So as far as I see it, it's just like going into the void. Which is like, if someone listens to it, that's great. But like, I don't know. I don't know that it is like an interesting reaction or not, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that you sent me questions too, by the way, because I never have questions when I do podcasts. Like I just get on and then I just yap and just talk about stuff for like an hour, but I never have like a structured agenda or anything like that.
The thing is, those questions, they were only for the first little like on-chain summer shorts series.
Mm-hmm. That makes
So
sense.
they're really not, they don't have anything to do with the podcast in that sense, because the reason why we sent them is because we learned that if we don't, some people will just yup and yup and yup and they will not stop. And it's super hard to cut 30 minutes of conversation down into 5 minutes webcast video format.
And
So
I feel like I did a pretty good job then. When
honestly,
you said that,
thanks.
you were like in as little words as possible. I was like, bet I can give you one-liners if you want.
Very efficient. What would you advise me or us building Los Fomos as this show, like media brand, but also just a lifestyle brand? We don't want it to be only we don't want it to be a podcast. We want it to be more than that.
Yeah.
So, any advice?
I don't know. I guess my reaction is like, I'm actually having the same conversation with Hire, like the Hire Collective right now, because they have this brand that people recognize and that is like established within Farcaster, but they don't have like a destination. And I actually feel the same way about Coop Records. Like we're currently building out the Coop Records site because I feel like we have this brand that exists and you kind of like know what it is like overarchingly and you touch it like asynchronously through like individual songs and whatnot, but it doesn't have like a home base. And I think that channels are supposed to be those home bases, but they're not currently. Like I don't know about you on Warpcast, but I don't like go and just like hang out in channels. Like I just post in channels to get engagement because there's people in them. And so I feel like there needs to be like a home base that people go to like really feel what it means to be like in Los Fomos and that has like all of those rituals and those routines that you were telling me about on the podcast and like a very tangible format.
I think channels could be expanded if you had different feeds for each channel. Like you can have a conversation feed that is a bit more like, well, conversational, like Discord like. Then you would have the main feed that is curated, only the moderated posts show up there, and then you have stuff like recent and so on.
Have you ever talked with Adam from Mint Podcast?
I have never.
I'm recording an episode with him on Friday, but he has this new program called Blueprint that he's launching, and it's basically a incubator, for lack of a better term, about helping content creators on chain like have their content go viral and just like be able to create more of like a recurring loop around that. So he just got a bunch of grants from projects and he's like giving the people in the cohort like a budget to basically run on-chain ads around their content. And I feel like you being a part of that would be really interesting as like a byproduct of you also building out this site and just kind of having like a funnel to really build around. Because I feel like for crypto communities, like you need to have like a recurring funnel. And I think right now that to me, from my perspective, is these podcasts. But I think that the podcasts are just one of many pillars that you're going to stand up. But like starting with the viewpoint of like, how do I just get this podcast to be like generating a lot of like revenue that we can be using to reinvest in the project itself feels like a pretty good place to start.
We have a section called Los Fomos Builders, and we kind of created this new channel where we make builders post weekly updates of what they've been up to. And we applied with Hire to get a grant and then redistribute this, like similar to rounds, to the people that actually post on the channel. We have so many people that we've engaged with via Los Fomos, this on-chain summer series, that it would be cool to give something back.
I mean, that's the name of the game. That's kind of like the whole system that me and like Adam and Lucas and David from Hume are playing is like going to projects and getting grants and tokens to be used as budget for marketing spend to propagate our on-chain content. And so for me, it's like the music, but for Adam, it's his podcast. For someone else, it might be like their paragraph articles or something like that. But I don't know. I just feel like you're in this really good pocket right now where like you're super tapped in, like on Farcaster, you like know all the people, but you're also just like paying attention to all the products that are happening. And I think you're in a really good position just to be able to like be one of the early content creators that's like really building a sustainable business on the back of like putting out really compelling and engaging media on chain.
Thanks. And thank you for giving an hour and a half and more of your time to be part of it. That's super fun. And I love the conversation.
What's your perception of Coop Records from your side? You asked me what I think of Los Fomos. What's your perception of Coop Records?
It's a record label, an on-chain record label. I think it's very clear from the name, even when I didn't know anything about the company itself yet. The first thing that I saw was you and your personal brand. I think back on Twitter. I really like, and I have to tie it back to the personal brand because for me it's really intertwined in this case.
Yeah.
I think you seem very authentic. You share a lot of updates about yourself, about the project, and you ask for feedback. You do user testing on the timeline, as we call it. So it really involves people in the building process, and that makes me as an observer already feel like I'm kind of part of the project, and so it makes me want to follow along. That's my perception.
Love that. Have you listened to the music?
I did. For example, the one that you shared, I think you made a comparison to Disclosure, someone who was just out of college.
Yep.
Yeah. So when I hear a little bit of backstory for an artist, the reason why you like this type of like this piece of music, that makes me want to listen to it.
I totally agree. That's like something that I actually told my team about this week that we need to be doing better about is like, I know why I like the music and why I put it out on the label, but it's not clear on Warpcast why I like the music or like through like the song descriptions or anything like that. So it's something that I'm trying to be a lot better about is like telling the story of like why I'm actually bringing these artists on chain and not just like giving you a song and expecting you to like it because you like listen to it, you know?
Yeah. Backstories are super cool. Behind the scenes are really cool as well.
Was the girl that you were referencing from Dracula, was it Jaden Hills or was it Baker Grace? Because it was one of those two.
It was Jaden Hills. Jaden Hills.
Yeah, cool.
Because I actually know her from Dracula. I watched her videos a few times. They popped up on my feed. I think you're curating those, right?
Yep.
Well done.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was her.
That was a really cool one because we got the song to like #1 on sound and it like popped off and it had like 5K mints or something like that. And she just started putting out music from her artist project. She's like a songwriter and she's been like in LA doing music stuff for like a long time. But she like just started doing her own personal project and she's been feeling like really just ungratified in the sense that like all of her friends are like really big artists but have super successful careers and she's like trying to get there, but it's just taking time. And so when she saw that she got like #1 on sound, she was like freaking out because she felt like she was like seen for the first time with her artist project as a result of that. And it really came through in that video. Like I know exactly the one that you're talking about and it's definitely like a pretty powerful moment for sure.
It's one thing to have a life-changing experience in general, but then it's because of crypto. That's really cool. Like I didn't do that yet, but I want to share the video to my friends.
Yeah,
My off-chain
100%.
friends.
Your off-chain friends, because there very much are off-chain friends. I think that's one of the misnomers of crypto is that like there's only crypto friends, but I have like completely separate worlds, you know?
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, and see you soon. See you soon on the timeline and potentially when Taco is back as well.
You got it. We'll chat soon.